Gender-based violence continues to be rather a sticky issue in Sri Lanka. It is a topic that is discussed in Parliament and at various forums. Yet we still see incidents taking place. We still see loopholes in the law, I guess, as a result of which these incidents are not getting the proper focus or the attention that it needs. So I thought we'll maybe discuss this topic and to discuss this rather sticky issue. Joining me on the program on Let's Talk today is attorney at law, lecturer and general practitioner, Jerusha crossette-Thambiah. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Sulan. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Firstly, Jerusha, how weak, because we see, some of these incidents still taking place when it comes to gender-based violence. But how weak are our laws? You being a lawyer, how do you see this? Do you think that our laws are weak when it comes to protecting women in Sri Lanka?
So there's it's a two-faceted argument here, starting from our constitution and then the penal code and then separate individual laws. We seem to have quite a bit of protection that is not underused, or the system is not using as well in order to protect these victims. That is one issue. But at the same time, some of our laws are also archaic and in need of immediate change. So if you look at sexual and gender-based violence, the most predominant amount of cases are seen in domestic violence, rape, or grave sexual assault. Then we see online violence and sexual harassment very broadly. All of these are covered by different laws. The rape laws are in need of change because they are very narrow. You need to also add using of instruments, using of other things except a male organ. If you look at online violence, the current act also penalizes the woman who shared her pictures in trust, including the perpetrator who shared it, because it comes under a cultural argument that it's obscene to even share your own pictures. So these things need immediate change. But if you look at the domestic violence law, we have quite a progressive law that is in need of very little change, which sometimes is not as well used, or the system itself slows the progress of using these laws. And so that then affects the victims thereon. Sexual harassment, there is a very clear mandate in the penal code, which up to today has not been used. If you talk to 90% of women in Sri Lanka, they will tell you they have undergone some sort of sexual harassment, including catcalling on the streets. But it is only just this month that I noticed the police is not sorting these cases or settling these cases and have been advised by higher-ups to file these immediately in court. Till now, it was taken very lightly that sexual harassment is not a big deal. If you catcall, if you make a joke, those are fine. But now I see that there is some progress. So to answer your question, yes, there are laws. Yes, there are some that are in need of reform immediately. But even the ones that we have, I don't feel are being used to its paramount duty, because a lot of the system and the lacunas we have in the system seem to be slowing the use of these laws.
But what sort of, as a lawyer, what sort of cases have you come across specifically? What sort of cases are we seeing reported more these days?
So if you look at the Sri Lankan context, the highest amount of cases will be rape and domestic violence. Those have been historically, primarily for a long time, the highest reported cases. But something that I've noticed pre-pandemic and then right through the pandemic, there was a spike in these numbers, was online violence. Because people were locked away, a lot of people in relationships could meet each other, a lot of the posting and sharing of information happened online. And now I get a lot of...
This was more during the COVID period, is it? The lockdown?
The COVID period, so it saw a spike, but I believe it must have been there because even up to today, there are a lot of leaks happening. A lot of pictures being used without permission. Unfortunately, we don't have the system. The police are unable to stop some of those sharing on WhatsApp, and we don't have the proper laws also to penalize them. But the police is doing what they can. So very recently in a case, even those in WhatsApp groups that were sharing these pictures, if a contact of those people were given, they were brought down and they were given some kind of legal there was some legal recourse even towards people sharing it, and they were brought even into the court case if they were able to be traced. So the problem is that, with WhatsApp, once it's out there, it's very hard to curtail. Even WhatsApp, even Meta, the organization is unable to support completely with this. They've been working with Sri Lanka, but they have a million cases, and then it takes only 24 hours to publish something that is seen as revenge porn. So I saw a big spike during COVID, but I would like to think that this has been happening because it's still ongoing even after COVID.
If talking about cybercrime here, and you mentioned Meta, but if technology is being used like this, to shame people and abuse people, can I don't know? I'm just asking off this. I mean, can someone take action against, let's say, Meta for not having certain systems in place to prevent these images being shared, videos being shared, people being abused through social media?
So this is like a chicken and an egg situation because they also tried. I don't know if you would have heard of Snapchat. And at the beginning, there was this little facility where if someone screenshotted what you sent, it would send you a notification. But what happened was then people started screen recording from another phone. So because IT and technology is so fast-paced, even companies are unable to fully 100% foolproof the system because somebody else can come up with another method. The secondary thing is pages like Facebook and all of that, it gives autonomy to the owner of that page. So if your name is on it and you write a hate message about somebody, Meta cannot be sued for defamation because you are doing it under your name. So that kind of freedom has been given. In the same way, if you misuse pictures, then that crime sort of has to be pursued against you. The company itself generally won't take that onus because there's freedom to express the way you want on your particular page that is under your name. So that is the kind of situation we have. That being said, Meta is well aware that these things are happening. Facebook has actually reached out to lawyers. We've had roundtable meetings. They've tried to assist. We have local teams who worked with them. But like I said, the inundated, the backlog of all of these complaints and how fast it is to actually generate this kind of leaks doesn't seem to match up, and they're unable to cope with solving everything. That is why our laws have to be really strict so that people know better than to leak for a purpose of revenge.
Can more awareness help deal with these kind of issues, especially since, if our laws are weak? Would public awareness sort of help address some of these issues?
Definitely, awareness is one of the key things because a lot of people don't know that there is pro bono help. They don't know the laws that they can come within. Everyone thinks of the legal system as a very uphill sort of task to now go and you have to spend so much time. But in my experience as a lawyer for the last decade and a few years, I have seen that if you bring people to book, if you hold them accountable, the numbers reduce. Even those parties who are brought into cases, I've never seen them really come and repeat it very often. So holding them to some kind of accountability works the best. But our system is not something very friendly. So we must create awareness around it, not only to litigants, but also to lawyers, judges, medical professionals, everyone who supports, all stakeholders and key players, that this is how you must handle it. It's a sensitive issue. It's a gender sensitive issue. You need training handling this. We see a lot, oftentimes when we go to the police station, the police officer, the lady police officer giving a big lecture to my client about Sanskritia and how they must refrain from sharing these pictures. This is not something that has happened yesterday, today. This is going to happen. This is the younger generation. They have access to phones. Before phones, people found other means to share these things. So this is not going to stop. We need to work on how to protect people's rights within the system. So not only potential litigants, but even stakeholders, I would say, need awareness, need training, need to know what their role is, what their scope is, and how better to give confidence to people to come forward into the system. So like I said, there is a very clear law on brothels saying only managers and owners will be prosecuted. But for the last several decades, women working there have been prosecuted when the law explicitly says women making a living from this cannot be prosecuted. It was only recently in a case that we were able to uphold that in an MC, and I still see raids happening. I still see women being prosecuted. So like I said, more than the law itself, creating awareness to stakeholders will be a better thing to do, so that we can hold them to book with the laws we have to start with.
But I mean, that's an issue, isn't it? I mean, if police are going and arresting, sex workers, seemingly, the people who are supposed to protect the law are now, abusing the law or don't know the law. I mean, then, can these workers then maybe turn back and take legal action against the cops for, abusing the law in that case?
So this has so many parts to it, because you would have heard or you would have seen this viral video of a very senior police officer saying something like simple abuse is not domestic violence. Who is here to define what simple abuse is? Does that mean that women should subject themselves to this? I'm saying women because a lot of the cases 4:1 is generally a woman being abused versus a man. So when that is the training given, when they've been given this mandate to keep families together. I'm a big believer in divorce, not because I think families should go apart, but because I think toxic relationships produce children who have so much baggage and so much to deal with, which is unfair on the child. If a relationship isn't working and people are acting in a way that is so bad for a child psychologically, divorce is a very honorable way to get out of it, I would think. But the police have been trained that family over everything. So even if there is incest, even if there is rape in the family, even if there is abuse, even if there is drinking, our job is to somehow patch everyone and keep them together. This is
because of you mentioned Sanskruti, the culture.
Yes, apparently this is our culture. So I am taught to believe that Buddhism has all of this peace and grace and mercy principles, but that is not applied. It is only to keep up this kind of show that we have a family. I'm a big believer in busting those myths, because I've seen the kind of damage it does to the next generation, and then the children start either become victims or they are perpetrators themselves, or they don't know how to deal with it and they go through years of having psychosocial help. So the police are not going to suddenly get retrained. That is why it's important. I know a lot of NGOs and a lot of private parties themselves have tried to train the police. I know I keep placing this blame and burden on the police. They themselves are inundated with so many other things, let alone gender-based violence. But I think the state should also take some responsibility in giving more female police officers, more trained staff. And we need to change this Sanskruti thing, because victims are shamed either for sending pictures or for getting abused or for why did you go late in the night? I had a case where a cab service, a man inappropriately touched one of the clients who were riding in the cab. And the first question the cop asked was, where were you going? That doesn't matter. Women are not all going to have somebody to take them around and protect them. And these are happening to little boys, little girls, all of them. So we need to change this, because our culture is false. For me, it's false. Outwardly, we have this culture, but inwardly, so much abuse happening. So I would say we need to start with creating awareness, like you said, training the police, and the police themselves as protectors need to know what their mandate is. Their mandate is not, it's a very sexist sort of thing, because they'll ask you, now you're going to ruin your family, who's going to feed your children? That's the question always asked. But some of these women actually end up dying. They say 1 in 3 women murdered are murdered by an intimate partner. We ourselves in Sri Lanka saw a case a little out of Colombo where a woman was murdered by her husband during a power cut, and this particular woman had a protection order against her husband. But the police on several occasions had failed to serve and take action against him. So when this is the reality, I would think police have to be trained, and a lot of money, a lot of effort has to be put in training them, because they are the first place that a victim would go to and very easily be turned off from the entire system if they are not received well.
Do you feel that this issue also needs to go into the school system when it comes to gender-based violence, women's rights, what they need to know, what action they can take if they are sexually abused or harassed? I mean, we're talking about catcalling. Some girls feel that there's nothing that they can do. If this is brought into the school system, would it sort of help maybe reduce some of the sort of incidents that we see in Sri Lanka?
The good news is the younger generation seem to be taking this more seriously. They don't seem to want to stand for it. The bad news is it's also being used as a revenge plot sometimes. We see that this cancel culture. I saw recently a Marvel actor, there was a domestic violence complaint against him, and he lost his, before any investigation, he lost his role in the Marvel movie. Later on, investigations might have panned out. So there is this fear, even in Sri Lanka and even in legislators, that if we bring this to a school system, or if we legislate very strongly on this, men can be treated harshly also. But the truth is that can happen for any kind of crime. It doesn't have to be only gender based, and there has to be thorough investigations into it. I am a believer in starting early, putting these thoughts into children's heads, because they can be allies. About a very high amount, more than half of the cases brought to me, a lot of the moms say, my children finally pushed me to take this decision. It's because they are more aware, they don't stand for this kind of violence, they watch it and they want their mom to be free from it. So yes, schools have to start teaching them so that children can look out for this kind of behavior, speak about it. Also, they can be allies, and also they will know what is right and what is wrong. So yes, the school system will definitely help.
Gender-based violence, of course, is not unique to Sri Lanka. We see this happening in a lot of countries. But I guess very little, I'm here speaking to you in Australia, we see very few incidents taking place. Some of the opinion that, these incidents are maybe higher in countries like Sri Lanka because of poverty, because of economic issues. You mentioned earlier about COVID and how some of these incidents were reported back then. I mean, in your opinion, do you think that these, poverty, economic issues are sort of adding to the rise in numbers in countries like Sri Lanka?
The comparison between the countries would first be about the system. I think Australia has better systems. You saw the recent reforms in their rape laws that saw one of our own sports people being under investigation for a long period of time. So the first thing is systems, but definitely we did a study. I was commissioned to do a study by a NGO where we did a study on domestic violence in the light of COVID. And there is a definite spike in numbers because people were locked up with their abusers. People had travel restrictions. The police and the medical authorities who were already inundated, not sensitive to these issues, were anyway overburdened by the health issue itself. So we saw a severe spike in these numbers. Alcoholism was at a high because people were drinking inside their homes. There was no income, so there was more frustrations. And so we saw all of these abuse, including online violence, skyrocket during this period. Economic issues and poverty definitely add, and the vulnerable are made further vulnerable because of these situations. So I would say, yes, that is an issue. It has to be dealt with, aside from actually strengthening the system to be able to at all times keep things in check. So the study that will be published soon will show you that the numbers were much higher during this period.
Well, it was really good. I mean, we are running out of time, so we'll have to cut short. Thank you, Jerusha, for joining us on the program. A very sensitive topic, relevant topic at that as well. Thank you for taking time and discussing this topic with us on this program today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me again.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for you for Let's Talk for this week. Till next time, stay safe.